Good evening and welcome everyone to Train Tuesday. I'm your host, Jim Wiggin with Athearn, and so glad you could join us. If you're watching us live on the live stream, welcome. If you are catching us on our YouTube channel after the fact, well, we welcome you as well. And if you do like the content that you're seeing that Athearn brings to you on a weekly basis, please do us a favor, like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That way you're notified every time a new video like this drops into the channel. We also watch comments, so if you've got some comments about tonight's video or any other videos, feel free to drop those in the comment section. We try to read each and every one of them and try to reply to as many as possible. So let's see who's joining us here tonight. I see Ronald is here, Mr. Sid is here, Donnie, Wardell, Dave Reynolds is here, Grandpa Rails, George, Jason, David, DG Model Works is in the house, and Jason, just to name a few. So glad you could join us on this Tuesday evening. And it's getting a little chilly out here, which tells me it's time for more trains. So tonight we're going to be talking about Athearn Genesis GATC covered hoppers. These are kind of older hoppers, but as you'll see tonight, some of these cars lasted well into the 70s, 80s, and in one case, even the 90s. So we'll be talking about those in a minute. One more round of shout outs for our folks that are joining us live. We really appreciate you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to watch Athearn Train Tuesday. I see Glenn is here, Ronald, Biker Brian is here. Biker, if you're like me, you probably put your bike away for the year. Ronald, Dave, and BNSF N Scale, Harold, and Derek, and Model Railroader as well. I want to thank you all for joining us, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with another Train Tuesday. We're going to be talking about the Athearn Genesis GATC 2600 Airslide covered hoppers. Now, the ones specifically that we're going to be talking about tonight are 1955 all the way to, believe it or not, I found some photographic evidence of 1995, and that's going to come into play when we talk about the Conrail cars in a moment. Now, let's go back, and starting in 1953, General American Transportation began building the Airslide covered hoppers. Now, one of the two original configurations was a 2,600 cubic foot single bay car with a 70-ton capacity. In addition to railroad-owned cars, there were several Airslide covered hoppers leased by GATC to sugar and bakery companies. Later, larger cars were introduced as railroads continued to improve upon their infrastructure. To extend the useful lives of these smaller 2,600 cubic foot cars, some of them were permanently connected in 2-unit drawbar sets, which we have offered in the past. This run will not have any of those, but something that's worth historical note. Now, the drawbar sets operated as a single car, and therefore had a whopping total capacity of 5,200 cubic feet, although their substantial length was a notable drawback. Now, while most of the cars that were built in the late 1950s, some included in this run, would see revenue service well into the early 1990s. We also want to remind you, too, that Athearn product developers, we give you a range as far as your prototype dates. That basically means based on the photography that they found for those particular cars, that's a certain time and date. But we also look at the markings of the cars, we look at other spotting features of the cars, and we give you a range when the plausible range could be for those cars. Now, there have been some dates that have been on the PDF on the Athearn website that's caused a little bit of confusion, and that's because in some cases we're talking about the build date. In other cases, we're trying to narrow it down as best we can within the middle of that era range. But we're going to talk in a much broader term tonight about ranges, which should help you in your modeling. So before we go any further, I'm using the example that is actually currently in stock at your Athearn dealer right now. Now, we are completely sold out at Athearn, but these are available to most dealers. We shipped these a couple of months ago. This is Santa Fe car number 310124. And if you like this car, the item number for it is ATHG 87492. Again, that's ATHG 87492. Now let's get started and talk about what we're going to be offering you for the month of November. You have until Friday, November 29th to place your pre-orders on these cars. And we've got a good range for you guys. So if you've got some sugar industry in you, or you've got some bakery online on your layout, one of these cars may find a home on your roster. So let's get started. And we're going to be talking about Conrail tonight. So Conrail classified these cars as H40s. Most of these cars were from the former Pennsylvania Railroad, and some of these cars lasted into the 1990s. Now, these are going to have Bettendorf trucks, and you may be thinking, wow, lasted until the 90s. That's something. Well, there is picture evidence of these cars lasting until the early 90s. We'll talk about that cutoff date on Bettendorf or friction bearing trucks here in a moment. But if you're modeling late 1970s, specifically 1981 on up, these cars would probably be perfect for you. Obviously, the earlier date of 81, they're going to be a little bit cleaner because they've just been shopped and repainted. As those years go by, of course, they're going to see wear and tear. So again, the plausibility era for these is anywhere between the early 80s into the 90s. Now we're going to be offering 3 cars under Conrail. The car that you see on your screen now is Conrail 880305. We're also going to offer 2 additional cars, road numbers 880307 as well as 880330. I know there's some Southern fans in the audience. I saw Dave already, and I know he's a huge Southern fan. And these cars are more specifically 1979 on up. Now, the Southern Railway had a fleet of Airslide covered hoppers within the 9000 series. The cars in this run had enamel lining applied in 1979, so these cars would have been seen from 1979 into the 80s, probably even after the formation of the then new Norfolk Southern. These cars are stenciled for flour loading only, just for your edification. So if you know what your spotting features are for your industry, and they were to be returned to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Again, we're going to offer 3 road numbers for these cars. The car that you see on your screen is 90027. Additionally, we'll offer car numbers 90033 as well as 90040. Coming up next, we've got a Canadian National car for you. These Canadian National cars, again, 1979 on up. The cars in this set were originally built back in 1954. However, the stencil on the side of the car states that polyclutch line was applied in August of 1979, and as well as the ACI card tell us that this car would be perfect for those modeling. 1979 into the 80s, even though we're kind of at the tail end of ACI panels, a lot of those still stuck around. In fact, I'll still see one occasionally somewhere when I go rail fanning. So it's plausible to see this car into the 1980s. Now, this car is assigned to sugar and flour loading. It too is going to have Bettendorf trucks. What I failed to mention is on the Southern car, those are going to have roller bearing trucks. Canadian National, however, will have Bettendorf trucks. We're going to offer 3 different road numbers with the Canadian National. The one that you see on your screen is 392-000, and we'll also offer 392-002 and 392-005. Here we've got what looks like your standard CB&Q. This is actually a subsidiary. It's the Colorado and Southern. Now, CB&Q subsidiary Colorado and Southern had GATC series 810 through 819 cars, and they were all built in August of 1962. If you look at the artwork carefully, you'll notice that there is a Havelock Shops patch on there. That's basically saying that the Havelock Shops performed work on these cars in 1965. So they've been altered slightly from what they first appeared in 1962. Now, these cars would eventually go on to become Burlington Northern Cars 401510 through 401519. So as they appear here, they would probably be perfect from around 1968 and with some re-stenciling and weathering into the early 1980s. These also have roller bearing trucks. Some railroads like the Burlington Northern, and before that would convert these older trucks to roller bearings. So again, if you really want to get industrious and maybe you're modeling mid to late 1970s, you could certainly pick up these cars, re-stencil these for BN, do some weathering on them, and it's perfect for somebody that's modeling the late 1970s. Now we're going to offer three of those cars. 811 is seen on your screen now. We're also going to offer car number 813 as well as 817. Okay, now we're going to show you some cars pretty much as they arrived after they were built in the factory. And these are neat cars. We're going to learn a little bit about some of these sugar cars next. Now, the first one is a 1961 era, so you can run this throughout the 1960s. These cars with the reporting marks GACX are brightly painted for diamond sugar, and they were built back in 1959. Now, if you've got a bakery on your layout or you're modeling 1959 through the 1960s, these cars will definitely make for a colorful addition to your freight car roster. These are going to come with Bettendorf trucks, and there's three different road numbers that we're going to be offering. Now, remember, GACX would actually send these out to different sugar and flour companies. These are no different. These are road numbers 42318, and of course, reporting marks again are GACX. The two additional road numbers that we'll be offering for this car are 42319 as well as 42360. Coming up next, just going a few years earlier, is 1955. This is Nebraska Consolidated Mills. Now, founded in September of 1919 as Nebraska Consolidated Mills by Elva Kinney. The company was a conglomerate of four grain milling companies headquartered in Grand Island, Nebraska. The company moved its headquarters to Omaha, Nebraska in 1922 following the purchase of Updike Mill. In 1971, the NCM changed their name to, anybody guess? ConAgra. These cars were built in December of 1955 and would be suitable for modelers of the late 1950s into the 1960s, and they were stenciled for carrying flour. So we've got three different road numbers here. These again are GACX reporting marks. The car that you see on your screen right now is 42397. Additionally, we'll offer car 42400. And we've got two more to show you tonight. We're going to go to 1970 with Pillsbury. It's another great car. If you've got a bakery on your industry list for your railroad layout or club layout, you're going to probably want to pick up a few of these. Now, these cars were built in September of 1970. They have a reporting mark for GACX, and these cars carried flour and would be another good candidate for a bakery on your layout that's set within the 1970s. Again, with some additional decals, you can definitely push these into the 1980s. These are going to have Bettendorf trucks. And there's three road numbers that we're going to be offering for the Pillsbury covered hoppers. The one that you see on your screen currently is 44472. Additionally, car numbers 44474 and 44477 will also be offered. And then finally, Redpath. This is 1955. We're going all the way back to 1955. Redpath Sugar Ltd. is a Canadian sugar refining company that was established in 1854 and the first refining cane sugar in Montreal, Quebec. Headquartered in Toronto, Ontario, with additional packaging plant in Belleville, Ontario, the company is a subsidiary of the multinational American Sugar Refining. These cars have GACX reporting marks and were new in December of 1955, and they also include Bettendorf trucks. Three different road numbers for these guys as well. GACX reporting marks, 42362 is the one that you currently see on your screen, as well as 42363 and 42364 are also going to be offered for Redpath. So most of the cars in this run have Bettendorf trucks equipped with them based on the prototype. This will probably help you answer questions as to when they were in actual revenue service. Now, we know that in 1966, the required that all new freight cars were to be equipped with roller bearing trucks. cars that had been made previously were grandfathered in. However, in some cases, in this case, in this run, CNS, later the Burlington Northern and the Southern, their shops converted these cars to roller bearing trucks. Now, some cars, such as Conrail, however, still had their Bettendorf trucks into the early 1990s. And again, there is evidence of that. You can find that on yourself doing a quick internet search. There are some Conrail freight car websites that substantiate that statement. They were ultimately banned, however, in 1994. Trucks that had been converted to roller bearing trucks were ultimately banned from interchange service in 1995, just a year later. Interesting note on that, from the information that I was able to find, the reason why they banned those converted roller bearing trucks in 1995 was the line side detectors that were in use on the railroads at that time could not see them when they were overheating. So obviously a safety issue there. Now that is just the very surface of an in-depth study that you can do on trucks, freight trucks in the United States and Canada and when they were used. So if you want to do search yourself, there's plenty of great websites out there on just that very topic. But that's a pretty much a high point of why we're going to see these cars um, representing the eras and the dates that we have. Now let's talk about the features of the actual models themselves. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and use our Santa Fe as an example. So these are going to have a detailed underbody. They're going to include the outlet piping. Remember, these are Genesis, so they're going to be the top tier as far as detail. All that underbody detail is going to be included. They're going to have rectangular or oval shaker brackets, gravity or gravity pneumatic outlets, see-through metal roof walk, factory installed wire grab irons and brake piping, separately applied round roof hatches and brake wheel. And again, based on the prototype, roller bearing or Bettendorf trucks. Of course, these are accurately painted and printed. Again, product developers at Athearn have used actual photographs, books. I can tell you, but in the case of the CNS cars, that is based on a freight car book on the CB&Q. The highly detailed and injection molded body, again, based on the prototype. And if you're wondering what the minimum radius is for these cars, it's 18 inches. So even if you put a small layout, these cars are really small. So 18 inches, you've got no problem with that. They'll negotiate that curve without any issues whatsoever. So there you have it. You've got until November 29th, 2024 to place your pre-orders on any of these cars. I think I'm putting a bakery in my HS scale layout, and I think I'm just going to justify getting those Pillsbury and Diamond Sugar cars. We'll see. So with that, what kind of comments do we have out there? Questions that you may have? And let's see what else we got. Yes, these come equipped with McHenry couplers. Of course, you can convert those to your preferred brand of coupler. A lot of people do that, but they come with the knuckle couplers by McHenry. Unless you really want the old XF11s, I don't know who would, but let's see. Just going to go back from when I was doing the presentation to see if there are any questions on what we're talking about. Let's see what else we've got. Some good comments on these cars. Yeah, it's one of those things where there's a little bit of everything in this run. I mean, you're not going to have modern day cars in this run. This is an old car. Remember, these were built in 1955 to 1960 or so. Pretty much by the mid 60s, they were already replaced with bigger covered hoppers, but they did survive quite a few years. Let's see. Pretty much a lot of guys just talking amongst themselves in the chat, so I don't see any questions directed towards Athearn. A lot of railroaders says, "Ooh, I love that Pillsbury hopper." Yeah, I do too. It's a cool car. Let's see what else we've got. Jason, yes, good catch. 90,000 series. Yeah, not 9,000, 90,000. He's referring to the Southern cars that we were talking about earlier. So yeah, if I slipped and said 9,000, my apologies. 90,000. Anthony wants to know, are these hoppers used today? I could not find any evidence, at least for the roads that were mentioned for this run, still in use today. The newest picture I could find was 1994, and the Conrail car that I found picture evidence of still had Bettendorf trucks, which means it was probably not long for the world. I don't, I haven't seen one of these cars in active use in many, many, many years. A lot of them ran out of time. Glenn says, thank you, Jim, for doing both the CM and the Red Path. I can't take credit for it. I just get to report what the guys in product development do. This was purely John and Janek's team that put these cars together. But again, we want to thank you because most of these cars that we do, they were chosen because they were road names that you guys suggested through Athearn Product Suggestions email. So again, if there's something that you want to see produced in the future run, shoot us an email. It goes directly to product development. It's Athearn-product suggestions at athearn.com. And we will do our best. If we get enough requests for what you're looking for, you might see it in a future run. Yeah, some guys asking about the Bettendorf trucks again. They were outlawed. They were not outlawed, but they were told by the FRA after 1995 they couldn't be used in interchange service. Now, that's interchange service. You know, if it's a short line and they're using it within their own property, they could probably still use them. But it's been a long time since I've seen Bettendorf trucks, unless it's on a museum. Benjamin, yes, you asked a question. I didn't see it, so go ahead and ask it again. You got to remember when I'm doing the presentation, I'm working all the stuff that you see flying on you on the screen. I don't always see the comments. I apologize. I don't have that multitask ability with this program, but all right. Well, Benjamin's thinking of his question. Let's give you some interesting stuff that's going to be coming up. How many have been waiting for the SD45T-2s? I know a lot of people have been asking because we had people on our social media asking questions. We had people emailing us. Well, I've got good news. The SD45T-2s are now shipping. They should be in stock at your dealer, whether your dealer is local or online. And let's see let's go ahead and show you what's going to be available. So just to give you a rundown, we announced these a couple of years ago. These are Athearn HO, so they're not going to be Genesis level. They're going to come with the Economy sound decoder, or you can just get them DCC ready. But we did a wide range of locomotives for this run. Of course, we did 2 road numbers for Union Pacific. This is an early 2000s era locomotive. This was after, of course, the UP purchased the SP, and they inherited these locomotives from SP, and they did eventually repaint them. And we've got 2 road numbers, 4819 and 4825, that we're offering. Kind of neat features about this locomotive. It's going to have the nose headlight, as you can see. It's got roof-mounted AC, pilot-mounted ditch lights, small front anti-climber. You'll notice, too, it's got the modified L-style window in the cab. It's going to have a Nathan P3 horn and a large front plow. Now, speaking of Southern Pacific, we do have Southern Pacific in this run. And by the way, if you look at your screen, you'll notice the one that's on your screen, that's the item number. So if you maybe haven't seen these locomotives yet, or maybe you forgot about them, there's the item number for the one that's on the screen there. You can call up your dealer. You can go online. You can place your order on these because, like I said, they have shipped and they're going to be at your dealer. So here's Southern Pacific. This is 9357. We did 3 different road numbers in this paint scheme. This is how they appeared in 1974. And we did 3 road numbers, 9338, 9340, and of course the one that you see here, 9357. Features on these, and remember, these were as SP ordered them, so as they appeared in 1974. So they're going to have the full SP front headlight package with cab gyro light. Now, I do want to mention that that operates only in DCC mode. Now, it's also going to have the L window cab. That was kind of a Southern Pacific thing. Nathan P3 horn, large front anti-climber. It's going to sound a lot like what I just said for the Union Pacific, because the Union Pacifics were basically these locomotives later on. But if you're modeling 1974 on up and you like the original Southern Pacific, well, then we've got these here for you. Now, if you want to model a little bit later, we also did Southern Pacific. And this is a scheme among Southern Pacific modelers. They either hate this scheme or they love this scheme. There's really no mediocre answer to this. Guys either love it or hate it. But we did 3 different road numbers in the speed lettering. And this is how they appeared in the mid-1990s. A few things had changed by the mid-1990s. You have a nose headlight, but a lot of that lighting equipment had been removed. When the ditch lights came into favor, that SP kind of slowly did away with all the lighting features. And so this has been modified. It also, if you notice, has a modified L window cab. Instead of that one piece of glass that's an L shape, it's now 2 pieces of glass. And that was probably done for maintenance reasons. Now, we've also got in this run, we did 3 different road numbers for Canadian National. Now, the Canadian National inherited the small batch of these. These were rebuilt SP SD45Ts, and they originally came from Duluth, Mississippi, and Iron Range, and they were used in iron ore service to help replace their aging fleet of the SD9s and SD18s. Now, one of the things that we got a lot of comments about, and you'll see it here, is you don't see the sublettering on the cab. A lot of folks had originally reached out to us when we did the announcement on these and said, hey, you need the sublettering. I've got good news for you. Even though this photograph from our studio doesn't show it, we do include the sublettering decals with your detail kit that comes with these models. So rest assured, these 2000s era Canadian Nationals will include sublettering. And again, we're doing road numbers 405, 406, and 408. I know you guys like Prime for Grime, so for this run, we also did a Prime for Grime cotton belt. So you've got a faded out cotton belt here. These look great. I remember seeing these in the studio. If you're going to the Milwaukee Train Fest in a couple of weeks, you'll see, I think I'm bringing one of these to the show. They just look great. The Prime for Grime is one of our most popular sellers. And we did 3 different road numbers. This is late 1980s cotton belt. We did 9383, 9395, and 9403. And the faded colors really do make these stand out. So if you're wanting to add something kind of unique to your fleet for late 1980s, consider these cotton belts. And then finally, I would have to say the most popular out of all of these in the run were these guys, the Bessemer and Lake Erie locomotives. We did 3 different road numbers for these. We did 900, 902, and 905. This is early 2000s. And some interesting stuff. The cab headlight with the upper gyro light, that operates in DCC only. You've got the standard window cab. If you look carefully at the front of this, you don't see the L window. It's just a standard cab. Pilot mounted front ditch lights, Leslie 3-chime horn on the long hood. That's going to sound really good if you're a Leslie fan like I am. And the small front anti-climber. Again, early 2000s on those. Now, one of the things that we get constantly on social media and comments, in fact, I replied to a comment this last week on Train Tuesday from a week ago. Why don't you guys offer undecorated? I really want an undecorated locomotive. Well, currently we have SW1500s in stock that are undecorated. We've got the new Athearn Roundhouse F7As coming in the next few months that are going to be an undecorated. And also available now is the SD45T-2 in undecorated. Now, the good thing about this is when you buy the undecorated kit, you get all the detailed parts, as you can see here. So you can build anything that is based on prototype or your own short line It's, really the only limitation is your creativity. So these are available. If we see strong sales with the undecorated, we'll continue to do more. So there you have it. The undecorateds are in stock. They have shipped to dealers, and we're really excited to offer these for you. So stay tuned. And by the way, these were featured in last week's Athearn newsletter, the Dispatcher. If you'd like to get the Dispatcher sent to you on a weekly basis, go over to athearn.com and sign up for the newsletter. And again, we sure to send one out every Friday. All right. Well, I've got time for a few questions, and then I'm going to let you guys get back to it and get some modeling done. So let's see what we've got. Charles, I got bad news for you. No, they're not an N scale. We only have these in HL. Brian Wilkinson says, you know what? It's not really what I modeled, but that CN is nice. It is pretty nice. It's a very nice engine. And by the way, these things run absolutely. They run great. I don't have a reason to put one on my layout, but maybe I'll think of something. Maybe one of those undecorated ones will show up on my layout. No plans to do these in N scale anytime soon. We've got enough N scale projects to keep us busy for a couple of years. That doesn't mean that we won't ever do them in N scale. It just means not right now. Benjamin, I think this is the question you asked earlier. Do you know if the Conrail hopper rail cars ran through the Effingham, Illinois area? It's plausible. Don't forget that right by me in the Champaign area, we had the P&E, which was a subsidiary of the New York Central, and which when I first moved here in the 90s was still Conrail. So it's very possible that they would have gone through Illinois that way. Going through Effingham, it's possible. Freight cars typically can go anywhere in the country into Canada and even into Mexico. Generally, though, depending on what their predominant service was, usually would dictate a route, but it's plausible. Anything is plausible. I've seen Maine Central boxcars in Galesburg, so I mean, anything is possible. Let's see, what other questions we've got? That's a great idea. The UP paint would look good patched out for a leasing company. Great. And that would make sense too, because I don't think UP kept hold of those for very long, if my memory is correct. I think by what, 2005, 2006, they were off the property. I'm only guessing on that, so don't take my word for it. Let's see what other questions we've got. Nathan, I see your comments all the time, buddy. You need to go to, okay, Nathan, write this down because I get you every time in the comments, and frankly, it's kind of turned into spam, so they get deleted now. So what I need you to do is write this address down. Athearn-product suggestions at athearn.com. Again, that's Athearn-product suggestions at athearn.com. And that goes for everybody. Send those comments and suggestions. They go right to product development. And if you see artwork online that you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't look quite right. I've got the picture of the actual car or locomotive here, and you want us to get that corrected before they go to production, use that same email. It goes directly to product development, and it will get to the researcher that's doing the work on that, and that gives us time to update the artwork. So definitely use that email. Here's a quick little endorsement from B&N Green 1970. So speaking of product suggestions, my Union Pacific GP9 with the branch line plow came in today. Beautiful engine. I have a pair of the B&N torpedo tube Jeep 7s on order, as well as an SDP 45 and freight numbers as well. Well, thank you. Thank you for your business, and glad to hear that you enjoy those locomotives. And yes, those UP branch line locomotives, that was purely based on the product suggestion email. I see some guys asking about the GP60s. What is the status of the GP60 locomotives? I don't have anything to share with you on those. I don't have any information on those. I do know that product development is working on multiple projects right now. We're going to have a new one at Milwaukee, but nothing on those. Any word on the RX 500? They are currently working on some things. I have seen some preliminary drawings. It's going to be a great little switching locomotive. When we have everything ironed out and we're ready to go, we will make an announcement. So stay tuned for that. I don't have a date for you, unfortunately, but do know they are working on those. Let's see what else we've got. And then I'm going to let you guys get back to it. Dundas Junction Model Railroad, Jim Wiggins. Sorry, no S. I can't afford the S. If I did, they'd tax me for it. It's just a Wiggin. I boxed my TH and B GP9 last week, 3 of them, and they run fantastic. Thank you. Those were gorgeous locomotives. By the way, those sold out pretty quick, so I'm glad you got those locomotives, and thank you for sharing that with us. Canadian Locomotive Logistics says, Jim, are you aware of a 3-day train convention in October 2025 in Burlington, Ontario? No, I'm not, but I'm going to have to look into that. Let's see what else we've got. Train Jack 16. I got 2 SP SD45T-2 locomotives last week. They are fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, they are really spectacular locomotives. Looking to get your Roundhouse BN F7 in before long. Can't wait to see it. Those are really nice. You can't see it because the display case is kind of cut off here. But I've got one of the original blue box F units, and it was one that I custom painted when I was younger and detailed. Back then, considered super detailing. And you compare that model to the newer F units, and it's day and night. It's just gorgeous. And the fact that they're decoder ready. Yeah. All right, one more question, and then I'm going to let you guys get back to some modeling. It's getting late, so I want to make sure you guys get some modeling time before logging off for bed and getting ready for work the next day. Jason, good reminder. I could use a few undecorated locomotives for my Railroad of Lies. See, you don't need to have a reason to get an undecorated locomotive. Just order one, paint it up, and see what you've got. All right, I want to thank you for joining me tonight on Train Tuesday, for all of our live guests, and for those that joined us later on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the Train Tuesday. Remember, those SD45T-2s are now in stock at your dealer. And in the next coming weeks, I'm going to be sharing some pictures with you of some highly anticipated locomotives as well as freight cars. They're getting close to getting here. So I want to thank you all for that. And don't forget, we're going to be in Milwaukee in just a few weeks. We'll be at Milwaukee Train Fest. Myself and Mark will be at the booth. We'd love to have you stop by and talk with us. And let's share some model railroad stories together. Until next time, everyone out there, be happy, be healthy, be safe, do some good modeling, and above all, high greens. Take care, everyone.